welcome. I'm Howie Howard from Mr. Furious Records. And today on Dat Fury Radio, we celebrate a new album out at MrFuriousRecords.com and MrFuriousRecords.bandcamp.com. It is called Oranges of Ganymede by Night Mode, specifically by Ed Howard, my dad, with collaboration from me. If you're a synth nerd or a weird music nerd, you may have caught the title's reference to Morton Subotnick's classic Silver Apples of the Moon. Great album, worth checking out. And if you caught that reference, you have some idea what you're in for with this new Night Mode album. It's Dad's second Night Mode album. It's a wildly experimental synthesizer album. As a reference in private conversation with Corey, and with my tongue firmly in cheek, I must say, we called this Dad's unlistenable record. But obviously it's not unlistenable. We hope you'll listen to it. It is challenging. And what caught my ear on the day that Dad recorded it in the dining room, and what I tried to bring out in the production, which we'll talk about in real detail later in the pod, and what I find as I return to it in my own listening, what caught my ear and what I love about it and what I think is the signature of this record are the brief but very real moments of consonance and harmony that coalesce out of this chaos and then dissipate almost as quickly as they arrive. And if you give this record your attention, I think you will be rewarded by those. I think that there's not another record like this. And that is something. That is a really cool musical accomplishment. We recorded this album on a single day in August. It was the day I delivered the Mnevis synthesizer that I built to Dad. I have covered the Mnevis elsewhere in this feed. But the goal of the recording session was to capture some of what Dad calls the good sounds, or the sounds that he likes, from the modular rig that he had been playing for about a year. Maybe I'll try and look up how long he had the modular rig. So his first synth was the Lyra 8. We've covered that. He made the album C. One of his gripes with the Lyra was its unpredictability. I mean, even to the level of temperature sensitivity and the way that feedback routes throughout the whole instrument. The Lyra is amazing and wonderful, but it is what it is, and it's not particularly controllable. So he wanted something more controllable, and I cobbled together some modular gear with a pressure points, make noise pressure points touch interface to control it. A couple oscillators, filter, delay, LFO, utilities, some logic, and that is the rig that he used to create Oranges of Ganymede. So we sat down, set up, recorded 3 jams, a long solo jam by him that became part 3, a brief happy accident he didn't even know I was recording that became part 2, and a medium length jam where intentionally both of us were playing the synthesizer at once. That became part 1. We did capture some of the good sounds, as he calls them, particularly the last third of part 3, his solo jam, during which he was smiling and playing and tapping his toes. He looked over me. He looked over at me about 20 minutes into this crazy synth jam with a huge, like, Christmas morning grin on his face and a nod like, these are the sounds. So I kind of structured that into the dynamic peak of that piece. And then in October, when I took a fairly complete draft of what I had done and added and mixed with his stuff back to him and played it for him, at that same section, even though he hadn't heard the music in 2 months almost at that point, he smiled and looked over it and nodded and was like, yeah, this is the stuff. So I take that as a real affirmation that we got something down that he liked. So we're going to cover some different things in this episode. This episode is going to be like a cross of This American Life, great podcast, and Song Exploder, another great podcast. I'm going to play you an excerpt from part 1, the collaborative jam. Then I'll talk to Dad. We'll have a little short interview. I'll play part 2 in its entirety because it's short. And then I will dissect Song Exploder style all the sounds that are in part 3 and go into the recording and production. And this is in part to answer a question from Drew about he's heard the album and complimented the stereo field and the spatialness of the finished mix. So I will go into detail on the production of part 3, which is the most elaborately produced jam. The other 2 are pretty raw, and hopefully explain what makes it tick to the extent that it ticks for you. I hope it does. I hope you'll enjoy the show and find it to be an on-ramp into this air quote unlistenable record. Again, tongue very much in cheek, but I wanted to explain both the initial spark of how it came about and how I shaped it into what you hear today. Sit back, enjoy. I hope to entice you to check out the project. Here is an excerpt from part 1 of Bronze Oranges of Ganymede by Night Mode on Dat Fury Radio. All right, I'm joined by my dad, Ed Howard of Crete, Nebraska. What's going on tonight, Dad?
Well, I'm just, so I got the supper finished up and just kind of came in here and was lounging around until this started.
Awesome. How do you feel about your second experimental synthesizer album coming out?
I like the idea. I have grown to be very fond of the synths and enjoy doing things with them.
So we were together earlier today and I tried to kind of refresh your memory. What do you remember about the day in August when you'd had the modular rig for, I don't know, about a year or something like that, maybe a little longer. And in August we traded out. I brought you the Mnevis synthesizer that I built for you. We did some recordings with the modular system, which is what this album is. And then I brought the modular back here and left you with Mnevis. But what do you remember about that recording day?
I remember that it was pretty easy to find sounds that I liked, that it was maybe I would say more play and less work.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was fun. I remember it being fun.
We kept it pretty light and low pressure. In fact, I think we even kind of started the session by saying it's okay if nothing comes of this, right? The goal was just to capture some of the sounds that you liked from the modular system,
Mm-hmm.
and see if that led us anywhere. This is kind of an abstract question, but how do you tell the difference between sounds you like and sounds you don't like so much? What makes a sound that you like?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think drones are nice, even though that may just be a carryover from before I had a synth. And but I maybe it's because that helped me get started in a way that I wanted to get started. So I like the drones and I like flying saucer sounds because I have been able to experience some of that in a high school language lab many years ago.
Yeah, and that kind of the flying saucer sounds was kind of the whole beginning of all of it, and we told that story about the language lab with your first album, C, available at nightmode.bandcamp.com, or I think you still have a few CDs of the first one if anyone wants to stop by the house and pick up a CD from you.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
I'll order you the CDs for the new one. I haven't done it yet. It'll take a few weeks, but I'll get you the CDs.
Okay. Yeah, there's several of those around, so we can, yep, believe we can supply anybody that wants them with one.
I don't know what you might say about this, but what does what does a drone sound like to you? Because I think to a lot your music is very active, and there's typically a lot going on compared to what a lot of people would think of as drone. So tell me what drone means to you, and then I have a hypothesis to kind of bounce off you as well after I hear your answer.
Okay, well, I actually haven't done much with drones. I I enjoy them, but I guess I've kind of grown away from them because it seems like, as I think back, that I'm not doing very much with drones now.
That's true. The new album is less droney than the first one, I think. But even the first one was relatively active, I would say. And so my hypothesis, and feel free to disagree, but I wonder if you don't seem to like a lot of silence or a lot of space. You like to have stuff going on all the time. Is that fair?
Yes, that would be true.
Is that part of what makes a good sound for you?
I will say yes to that.
What I know, it's hard to at this point separate out the sounds that you made versus the sounds that I added and the way that I mixed them and everything, but how do you, maybe this is more of an emotional question, how do you feel about the combination of stuff that you did and stuff that I did on this project?
I think we make a good team.
I think so too. Did it surprise you in any way? Does it I mean, I guess it's got to be hard because you just did the jams on the spot and you never heard them again until I had added my stuff. So you don't have it's not like you spent a lot of time with the raw jams that you did before I did my parts of it. So we structured the session. I don't know if you'll remember this, but we structured the session. We started out with just you playing, and that's the long piece. I called it part 3. So it's the way it appears on the album is the opposite order of the way we recorded them. So the long part 3 was actually the first thing that you did by yourself. But then I know it was important to you that we do kind of a 4 hands piece and that we play the synthesizer together, which is part 1. Why? Talk about how that was important to you.
The results were interesting, and of course it's fun working with you, and they just kind of came together. It seems like it was something that instead of working at, that just brought us together in of course you have much more experience with the synth than I do, but it was how am I going to describe this? It was,
take your time.
It was an emotion, to some extent it was emotional project, working on it with you. And well, then another part of it is that I had listened to your work before and had liked it and had realized that that would be something that would be fun for me to do.
You do. I try and let you jam a lot, but I feel like you do like it on those times when I reach over and turn a knob and say, hey, try this, or hey, listen to this, or hey, this is why this sound is happening.
Yes, I like that.
And that's kind of what the middle piece then is, which is truly the middle piece. So part 2 on the album was just a happy accident. You had done the big jam, and then we were kind of transitioning to do the collaborative piece. But after I had stopped recording, you were still kind of playing or trying a different sound, and it actually sounded really good. So I just hit record quick.
Oh.
With an abrupt start in the middle of what you were doing, because I hadn't realized you were going to do another thing. And that's just maybe 2 minutes of you playing, and then at the end of it, I reached over and turned the delay feedback up like all the way to get us out of it. But that was just kind of a happy little accident. Yeah. Any other final thoughts about Bronze Oranges of Ganymede?
They were pretty bright and fun, I would say.
The pieces?
Something that you could listen to a lot of times. They were moving and fun pieces.
Do you think you'll continue to listen to them?
There's a lot on my plate right now,
Sure.
but when we get some things off of my plate, I would say yes, I would listen to those again. There were times when I was listening to them that I thought, that's neat. I want to hear that again. So I think in the long run, yes, I will listen to them again.
It is. I know it's a challenging listen for a lot of people, but I think it is. I don't mean to undercut it. I genuinely think it's rewarding to listen to it multiple times because things start to jump out at you. You know, for the record is fairly dissonant for the most part, and that's what jumps out mostly on the first listen, I think. But on repeat listens, as your ear kind of learns the motions of it, the themes and the moments of beauty that I tried to bring forward in the mix and how I kind of processed everything and the moments of consonance that emerge and then dissipate. That's kind of what the record is all about for me musically. And I think those things start to come forward. I think the ear learns kind of when those are, and then takes some pleasure in anticipating and being rewarded with the thing that is anticipated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Cool.
I go along with that.
Cool. Well, don't hang up. We're going to let the listeners go, and I'll move into the next section of the show, but don't hang up. Listeners, stay with us. You're going to hear part 2 from the album Bronze Oranges of Ganymede by Night Mode on Dat Fury Radio. right, let's get into the Song Exploder segment of the podcast. I'm going to go into the details of the signals that make up this album. The modular rig this album was recorded on was controlled by a Make Noise pressure points. It was controlling 2 oscillators and 2 low-pass gates, one for each oscillator. There was an LFO with some mixing utilities. There was a filter on one of the oscillator signals. There was some logic combining the gates for the low-pass gates, the gate signals from the pressure points to the low-pass gates. And then there's a Bafako crush delay that actually forms the main signal you hear, and then the raw oscillators are mixed in. So I captured 3 signals from this rig, each oscillator going through its low-pass gate, one of them additionally through a filter, and then the crush delay output, which was pretty wet, meaning a lot of delay signal compared to original signal, but formed the basis of the dry mix. So the dry mix is mostly crush delay, augmented by the dry signals from each oscillator and low-pass gate pair. The first oscillator is an AI011, and it is the air quote melody, or generally the higher voice. Dad rocked that tuning knob on that oscillator all over the place. And the dry signal of that oscillator and low-pass gate sound like this. All these examples are taken from the same section of part 3, by the way, so they will all add up to an excerpt from part 3 at the end. The other oscillator signal is an Erica Pico wavetable VCO into a low-pass gate and Bastel cinnamon filter. Dad did not mess with the Pico or the filter too much during the jam for part 3, so it's basically a square wave sound that you hear, and it sounds like this. And then here is that crush delay sound that forms the basis of the dry mix for Dad's parts. So very wet, almost 50-50 maybe. It's not a precise thing, but quite a lot of delayed signal in there. So those are the 3 tracks that came off of Dad's modular performance for all 3 parts of Bronze Oranges. To those parts, I added let me be specific. To those 3 tracks that we recorded, 3 signals, I added a 4th signal. I took the Dad's Pico VCO signal and ran it from the computer back through the filter and crush delay as an effects pass. And I was very aggressive with this effects pass, moving the filter and delay around, going for kind of a very noisy layer of sound to add in. And that sounds like this. Now for piece 3 only, I added 2 additional signals only for piece 3. One of those, I took Dad's Pico track, the dry track, and chopped it all up to where when he would move the Pico oscillator high, I would take my copy of that signal and move it down 1 or 2 octaves, resulting in a somewhat consistent bass sound. So when the Pico moves up, this copy kind of jumps in and takes its place at the bottom of the frequency spectrum and provides a relatively solid bass foundation for the music. That sounds like this. When you hear it dry, there are a good amount of artifacts, and it's not a terribly clean or pleasant sound on its own, but in the mix, it works. This is also without the track EQ or anything like that. This is just the raw signal. Finally, on part 3, I added a layer of pink noise, and that's actually pretty prominent at the mix. It fades in and out at the end, but it took me a while to come up with this in production, but having a strong layer of noise to my ears provided a foundation I could always come home to when listening, so that I could enjoy some of the wilder explorations and chaos of this piece, and the noise layer would kind of keep me grounded in the mix and give me something to kind of zone out to, if that's the listening experience I wanted to have. So it's just pink noise. I don't have the technical definition of pink noise up right now. You can easily Google that. But very plain, it's just Reaper's internal pink noise generator. Nothing at all special about this pink noise. So those are the dry sounds in part 3. Now I'm going to step through those sounds with their individual effects, particularly as it relates to the stereo image, which is to answer a very good question of Drew's, who gave a nice compliment to the stereo field and the image of the overall piece. So the dry AI011 oscillator is on a slow ping-pong pan, just left to right, same speed throughout, just slowly moving left to right. And as that combines with the main crush delay sound, the movement never goes 100% left or right once you combine the signals. So it's more of a halfway to each side or something like that, maybe less than halfway. I think I must have left the master stereo reverb on when I bounced this for the podcast, because there is I don't hear the fully dry ping pong effect. The Pico oscillator is just centered, I believe. Let me check my notes. Yeah, the Pico oscillator is just mono. It does have some EQ. Take the edge off that square wave. Yeah, this still has the reverb on it. So that's just centered, and the main crush delay sound has a 31 millisecond delay on the right channel only. And what that does is create some good stereo separation and space in the middle of the mix without sounding like an effect. So there's no feedback on that delay. And I use that trick a lot when I want stereo separation on a sound without the noticeability of a chorus or delay with feedback or reverb. I basically want the original tone, but with some stereo separation. And if you're an engineer, you might think about, well, what about phase cancellation? Well, the phase cancellation on a 31 millisecond delay is at about 33 hertz. And that's low enough. That's a signal a frequency, we would typically remove from a hard panned signal. When we're hard panning things, often we high pass, certainly at 30, if not at 60, 80, 100 hertz, or even higher, depending on the signal. So in this case, the cancellation around 33 hertz, which is about a low E on a bass guitar, that works in our favor. That's a frequency we probably would have wanted to remove from a hard pan signal anyway. So that sounds like this. And hopefully you can notice that separation. The signal, it feels stronger in the left channel, especially on headphones. But it doesn't sound like there's an additional delay beyond the crush delay, which is the dry signal in this case. And yet it feels spread out. And it leaves space in the center of the mix for other signals. If you want to use that trick, be careful with shorter delay times. Anything down to about, well, first of all, anything greater than around 30 milliseconds, listeners will start to perceive as an echo or as a delay. The separation gets so great, you can hear the ba-ba, ba-ba, the difference between the two signals. So 30 is about as far as you can push and still have it cohere as feeling like one signal. As you shorten the delay time, the stereo separation narrows, which can be good. Somewhere down around 10 milliseconds, you start to get into territory where your phase cancellation is creeping into frequencies you probably would want to preserve in many cases. So be careful with times lower than about 10 milliseconds on that. My Pico effects pass through the filter and delay again has the same trick on the other side. So the delay is on the opposite side, but it's the same trick, and it sounds like this. So on this one, the signal, it hits your right ear first, and your left ear 31 milliseconds later. Now the pink noise has another simple but interesting trick. It has different phasers on the left and right channels. It's the same plugin. It's two copies of the same plugin, if that makes sense. The only difference in the settings is the rate. So the depth, the frequency, the feedback, all that's the same. This is the stock JS Reaper phaser plugin. But the rates are different, and so the notches in the signal are different between left and right, and they're moving at different rates. So it gives, again, that stereo separation between left and right. That's a great sound, actually. I love that. I could listen to that for a long time. And I actually think that noise bed is a lot of what makes Bronze Oranges Part 3 work. Even with all the work I did, it would be a much more challenging listen, in my opinion, without that noise bed. And it's so simple. Pink noise, 2 filters. There might be a little more EQ or something on it, but the magic of it, to the extent that it has any magic, is pink noise, 2 phasers. I think I said filters earlier. I meant phasers. 2 phasers, different rates. Other than that, the settings are the same. 1 on the left, 1 on the right. And then here's the wet version of the octave down Pico track. There's not much to it except some low passing, which helps take off some of those artifacts and tucks it back in the mix where it belongs. This is only reinforcement. It's not any type of hero in the mix. So those are the sounds, but there's something else really important in the mix, and that is that Part 3 crossfades between all of Dad's stuff plus the octave down Pico track of mine and my effects pass with the delay feedback and filtering and everything like that. The noise bed is constant. And then there's a crossfader that's automated between those other 2 submixes. And I did that. That basically is the arrangement then, is how I automated that crossfade. I had to quick write an equal power crossfader for Reaper, since the built-in Reaper crossfader is equal gain. But that crossfade automation forms the arrangement basically, and I used it to, when the crossfade is on Dad's stuff, it's those moments I found most consonant that I wanted to bring out. And I did my performance of the effects pass. I mapped this out ahead of time and did my performance of the effects pass to jump forward and be more interesting and more active during the parts of Dad's performance I wanted to fade away from. So together, that's what makes the conversation, the call and the response of this arrangement. So the dry mix sounds like this. Not quite there yet, but you can start to see the shape of it. The mastering processing is nothing fancy, though I was liberal with it in terms of how much I applied. So first of all, there's lots of Arturia Plate 140. That's a huge part of the sound of this record. That was a free plugin at one time. I got it for free. I don't know if they still run. I believe it's paid now, but maybe they give it away occasionally. Outstanding sounding reverb. And yeah, I used a ton of it on this mix. After that, there is a 0.03 millisecond delay on the center channel only, not the sides. This is a Dan Worrall trick. I will link to his video about this trick. I love 0.02 or 0.03 milliseconds of that center channel delay. It's very subtle, but it trades a touch of stereo width for a bit of perceived depth. And what it does, especially on headphones to me, is it takes the sound out from inside your skull between your ears, and it puts it out slightly in front of you, as if you were at a show and the artist was on stage and you were hearing the music through a wonderful set of speakers. And I really like that sound compared to not having it. If you're worried about phase cancellation with that delay, don't be. The cancellation frequency of a 0.03 millisecond delay is about 33K, well above human hearing, so you don't need to worry about that. After that, the signal goes into a tape simulation. It's the free Air Windows 2 tape simulation for a little saturation and color. There's no compression or limiting on this master. The final loudness and level adjustments are made through my Tanch 10 plugin that I wrote, and just gain staging it, basically automating little moves on the input and output gain of the Tanch for each song, each piece, each part, is how I achieved the final loudness and peak levels that I wanted. So that is the breakdown of Bronze Oranges, and the final master sounds like this. Just listening now, I remembered one last trick in the mastering that I didn't put in my notes, but I had this all working pretty well, and it still just wasn't as listenable as I hoped it would be. And the last thing I did just about was I copied the crossfader automation that pans between DAD signals primarily and my effects pass. I took those same envelope shapes and applied them to a very gentle low pass filter on DAD's submix, so that as his submix is fading down in volume, there's also a low pass coming in that helps push it back in the stereo image. And to my ears, that was the final touch. That's what made it all finally click. And this whole thing that I had built with my additional signals and the crossfading and doing the arrangement that way, and that was the last touch that really made it gel to me and become a finished piece. I'm happy to share all these tricks with you. If you have more questions or comments about them, you can leave a YouTube comment. You can contact me personally if you know how to do that, or you can go to mrfuriousrecords.bandcamp.com and use the contact form on that page. Bronze Oranges of Ganymede by Night Mode, comprised in this instance of Ed Howard and myself, is available at nightmode.bandcamp.com. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe. Professional podcasting. I'm going to send you out on the last 5 or 6 minutes of part 3. I appreciate you listening to Dat Fury Radio. We'll catch you next week.